Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Wilds. Today we're taking a look at the fastest clears that we can find for tempered Seregios. This should give us a good indicator of the weapon rankings, how they're doing compared to one another, but as always, take this with a heavy grain of salt. I wouldn't take it too seriously. It reflects the current runs that are available, not what's 100% the true max power of the weapon, but it is a good initial look, fun to consider, and so that's what we're doing today. The usual rule for these lists then is no heroics, just because that kind of gets in the way of the true power of the weapon, but of course there will be faster times using heroics. Sadly then, at the bottom of this list, we start with bow. This is a 5-star Seregios to be fair, but it's still a 4-minute and 40-second run, which is noticeably the slowest run. I would argue that it's a mix of a lack of runs, rather than like the bow being weak. You're able to free aim at those claws, those talons, super well. And with tracer arrows, obviously you're able to make sure you're getting the max DPS there. This player has the fight up high in area 5 of the Windward Plains, which seems to be one of the optimal locations to fight if you're going to be in the Windward Plains. That's because of the multiple boulder pulldowns, which give you those free DPS windows. Perhaps why bow is a little bit lower is the fact with melee, they're actually good against Seregios because he does a lot of jumping and slamming, and the optimal place you want to hit is those legs. So where range weapons get that edge of aiming for weak points melee usually can't reach, I guess that just doesn't apply here. Either way, this is still a great run and a great way to learn bow for Seregios in particular. Next up then, we have a pretty exciting thing because at 13th place is Lance, which makes sense because Lance output is struggling even now. However, what's exciting about this for me is the fact that it's a fellow creator who's actually achieved this run. By fellow creator Shinkrai, who's had a lot of great posts for Wilds in general, but has also achieved the top run as far as we can find. So a huge congrats to Shinkrai. It takes place anyway in the arena, which is actually probably the best place you could fight Seregios at the moment, if not that high up area in the Windward Plains. This is a 5-star version of Seregios too, so if this was a 3-star, we could expect a slightly lower time. Maybe a sub 4 minute is very reasonable. I think this is really good for Lance because its output is definitely one of the lowest for the weapons overall, which sucks. A lot of the weapons are dealing with it super well through offsets, counters, and perfect evades, but Lance is just basically taking every hit and ignoring it, which is super fun. So if you want to learn Lance, especially against Seregios, this is the video to go check. But in general, check out Shinkrai's channel, and he makes a lot of great Twitter posts as well. Next up then we have heavy bowgun with a 3-minute and 27-second clear. As we start to go, this is going to be one of the last things we look at that's over 3 minutes long. Anyway, what's most interesting about this for me is the fact that it's spread, which has suddenly become very popular amongst the heavy bowgun users. Quite fun for this fight because we're seeing a lot of this aggressive gameplay, pressing against Seregios and basically shotgun blasting those legs, which causes many instances of damage and works great for this fight as it turns out. You're going to see a ton of the blade scale loading being used here though. As I was saying, perfect evading is a really important aspect of this fight, and so being able to do a sort of perfect evade style gameplay for that buff whenever you do it as well, with the Seregios heavy bowgun I guess, it's actually super cool. So this is a very unique run for heavy bowgun, but currently the top run we're able to find. So if you've been missing spread, now's the time. Right then, for our last over 3-minute hunt, we have Hammer with a 3-star tempered Seregios. This hunt takes place over a week ago, so I'm not convinced that it's the absolute peak of Hammer and the potential that it has. New Hammer has great output and that amazing moveset with all the offset potential. In this case, we see a lot of offsets, which is super satisfying against Seregios with all his jump slams and the timings of that. They're making use of thunder as much as they can against the legs though, which maybe is part of what holds the Hammer back in this fight, because obviously they want to be hitting head as much as possible, and that's quite hard to consistently do against Seregios. He's one of the few monsters that it isn't, say, the best thing to do to hit the head. Still, the flow of this gameplay is super satisfying to watch with all the movement and the offsets and the big heavy slams, and still plenty of knockdowns too. It was also in the Windward Plains, not at that high up area of 5. So if it was in an optimal location, I think a faster run is easily possible. So don't take this as a true representation of the peak potential of Hammer in this case. Either way, still a great run to watch and learn the Hammer. Alright, next up we have a 4-star tempered Seregios for the Hunting Horn, with a sub 3-minute kill, with a 2-minute, 59 seconds and 38 millisecond clear, just barely under that 3-minute timer. Still, this is a great showing for Hunting Horn because, you know, it's had all these buffs, been one of the low performing weapons for a long time. It's just great to see it do better than it's been doing in the past. With the Legaicrus list, it was somewhere towards the middle. It's a little bit behind that this time, but it's doing decently in this case. And I think there's still higher potential here. Though, again, I do think it's a weapon that suffers here in this context, considering you want to be hitting the head, generating KO with a blunt damage, and Seregios just doesn't really allow for that. You're hitting the legs as much as possible. Not to mention, you're trying to set up the kind of trifecta of the echo bubbles, right? That's a big thing that you're trying to do to maximize damage as Hunting Horn, getting 2 or 3 bubbles in a triangle formation around themselves, so you're able to optimize your DPS. With Seregios bouncing in and around all over the place, it makes that a lot harder to reliably do, I suppose, but it's still possible. Also, this was another run that didn't take place in that Area 5, or say the arena, so that could help further at a faster time. And as always, QUA remains a top source for Hunting Horn footage and learning the weapon, so check out the run. Okay, so this next one's interesting for me because Insect Glaive is absolutely dominating wilds for the entire duration of the release. It's been an insane state, and it's been either first, second, or around there in every list we've done, except when we start to look at these new monsters of Legaicrus and Seregios, where the top Insect Glaive runners haven't been posting tempered runs for some reason. They've been doing normal versions of Legaicrus and maybe Seregios. So, I'm not sure if this is the true top potential of the weapon. It feels hard to say that. An Insect Glaive didn't get majorly nerfed in this patch. Either way, this is still a really good run. A 2 minute and 49 second clear for tempered Seregios is nothing to sniff at. And as another note, it wasn't in Area 5 for the boulder drops, it wasn't in the arena, so it wasn't optimal environment either. And in particular with this run, it's super satisfying to see this player do the charge up attack and actually get the offset for a slam down for Seregios, getting those big meaty lifts through the body. But I guess that maximum DPS is a bit awkwardly placed because it's not all on the legs where it should be. It's going up into the torso. Still, it's a great run, and it's also one of the first where I actually see a tail cut, which is pretty rare for Seregios. Moving on then, we now have Sword and Shield with a 2 minute and 41 second clear. The times are now going to get really tight, as you're going to see. So Sword and Shield, about the middle of the pack, doing very well in this footage, though admittedly there's some shenanigans going on at the start. Once again, it's not in, say, that more optimal area of 5 or the arena, it's just kind of out in the wild. But in this case, it starts with a kind of turf war, with a poor, regular Cumatrice. I do think while, you know, I guess technically some damage came out from it, this mostly gets in the way. So maybe slightly better potential is there on the table as usual. But anyway, SNS is a great showing for this because it's going to be easy, fast DPS against those legs for the whole Hun. You're able to output fantastic thunder damage, which is going to be the main weakness here, obviously. Through perfect guarding and having that shield in general, you're able to kind of tank those slams and hits, shrug them off and keep going, which really shows in this run. But honestly, just being able to consistently slap and maintain DPS on those legs for surprisingly long periods before Seregios actually jumps and slams down again, it goes a long way in this case. And so SNS is probably a fantastic option for Seregios in general. And so if you want to learn how to maximize that, check out this run. Okay, next up we have light bowgun with another 3-star tempered Seregios. This one, like I was saying, really close times, was a 2 minute, 40 seconds and 92 milliseconds run. So basically, not much difference between the last run and this one. So as we were talking about with bow, it's not going to have as much value here being able to fire these ranged attacks for free at better locations, because melee is able to maximize DPS on those legs really well against Seregios. But that doesn't change the fact that the output and the ability to consistently put that output at the right place is phenomenal here. And even more so for light bowgun, it feels. You're getting this absolute blast of thunder damage the whole way, even when he's bouncing around in the air. And as we've seen in other speedruns, we're seeing use of flash pods, not necessarily to bring him down every time out the air, just to blind him. This goes a really long way for ranged gameplay, because while the monster is just randomly attacking the air, you just stood there hitting the optimal hit zone, not having to be in there dealing with the attacks yourself, which obviously is super impactful. A lot of this footage is aggro on the palico, or while it's knocked down, or while it's blind, giving this user just optimal corrupted mantle DPS time. And they continuously craft more flash pods during the run, which is a very clever bit of tech for this fight. So another one I strongly recommend you go check out. Alright, moving up to the last few here as we get towards the top of the list. Next up is Greatsword with a 2 minute and 36 second clear. Here we finally see some more runs in that quote-unquote optimal location of the Windward Plains, Area 5, where you've got the 3 boulders to potentially pull down and give yourself some free DPS. Combine that with Greatsword being able to do fantastic offsetting on demand or holding it for a charge and, as Seregios leaps back up and down. The timing is fantastic for that purpose, and we see a bunch of them in this run. Not to mention, you could set up the offset and see that Seregios is coming too quick, and then tackle that, prep the offset, and then go for the next one, which we also see here quite a few times. Seregios is an interesting one for charged attacks in general because he's not giving you long enough to actually get the full thing off. So the flow of this one is a lot of offsetting, a lot of tackling, and it's not until you see like an actual knockdown, whether that's from one of the successful offsets or just a normal knockdown, that any proper charges go off. So if you're someone that's been struggling with charge attack weapons like obviously Greatsword, then this could be a great way to learn how to maximize the shorter windows. And it's a big reason why I like to do these lists. So go check it out. Next up then, to my surprise, we have Switch Axe with a 2 minute and 35 second clear. Yep, basically a second faster than the last one. But why this surprises me is the nature of Switch Axe. It's all about full release spam, and that is not something that's very encouraged against this monster. Just like we're looking at with Greatsword, longer charge attacks, it's not great for this monster. And yet against this one, we have an incredible run that puts it near the top of the list. Of course, it takes place in Area 5 for all the boulder drops. This gives this player an easy amp charge, so they're able to open the fight and get amped straight away. In this update, obviously we're seeing the rise of Element Vial and how you're able to charge the amp state even faster because of it, which goes a long way in this context. But we open the fight with a knockdown from a boulder, a wound open which knocks down Seregios, and this is what's opening up the potential for the full release spam each time. You might think that just spamming the sword counter is going to go a long way in this fight, but the problem with the sword counter is that after you land it and then the monster goes for a second attack pretty quick, it often backfires as you're stuck in this double swing animation. This player isn't doing any of that, they're basically just doing knockdown spam, maximizing the boulder, both wounds on the legs, then the next boulder, so on and so on. And so I can see why this Switch Axe user did so well, despite Switch Axe feeling like quite a tough pick for Seregios. Next up then, we're going to jump forward 10 seconds in speed clear time, so this is insane. And again, it's 3-star, the rest are going to be 3-star for this purpose. It's Charge Blade with a 2 minute and 25 second clear time, 10 full seconds faster. It's Area 5, all the boulders. It's also going to be Element Vial, using that Thunder to maximize. And we're seeing that new awesome combo that's popularized now in Title Update 2, where it's a lot of AED into the follow-up attack, which has a lot of Vial pops for the element. This player goes toe-to-toe with Seregios though, with perfect guards on all of their slams, getting a clash off that brings it down for another combo at the head and then into the legs. At this point, you're seeing a lot of wound openings, which is obviously going to open up lots of potential for interruptions. But this new super slick gameplay of going from sword and shield mode into AED into the follow-up and then smoothly just repeating that. I don't know why, but it feels so satisfying. Maybe it's just all the Vial pops and again something that's weak to the element pops, like Seregios. It just does so much work here. So if you wanted to see the new sort of meta of Charge Blade, this would be a great place to do so. Right, next up then we have Longsword with a 1 second faster clear time. 2 minutes, 24 seconds and 87 milliseconds. Another 3-star Seregios here. But for a top run, there is a bit of a surprise here, not Area 5. Of course, it's a lot of the EI counter on the leg slam attacks and the jump attacks. It's controlling the fight by opening wounds and breaking them, bringing them to a knockdown, and then getting in that familiar combo. However, it does look like there's a little bit of Crimson Slash 2 and 3, which, in this update was slightly buffed with better element scaling too, which is obviously relevant against this monster and using a Thunder Longsword. Used only in the slightly longer DPS windows, but it is interesting to see that actually being used in any way. Though admittedly there's still a lot of Crimson 1, Spirit Blade 1 combo in all of the tighter windows, straight into an EI counter and a lot of that familiar stuff. And very excitingly, this player does actually use Helmbreaker a couple times in the run at specific moments where Seregios is going to be pesky and move away or interrupt. So, the height or say the hyper armor protection of those attacks is actually used here. Fantastic run. But we get to our last 2 weapons here. At second place, we have gunlance with a ridiculous 2 minutes and 12 second clear. That's 12 seconds faster now. What a jump at this point in the runs. This is insane. How is this possible though for gunlance? Well, I'm seeing a lot of long shelling gameplay for the runs for gunlance in general. We are, of course, seeing the fight take place in Area 5 once again for the boulder drops, which this player obviously maximizes. They are spamming the damage as much as they can into those legs. And that's interesting in itself because, you know, gunlance is one of those weapons that can often just kind of ignore the ideal hit zone and just DPS with the shells and such. But maybe it's a little bit different here with the long shelling. As soon as the Seregios gets going though, they do bring out a lure pod and lure it straight into the next boulder drop. They're making use of not corrupted mantle, but of course, rocksteady mantle to just kind of ignore attacks and get their DPS combo off. All 3 boulders are used very early into the run. Wounds are saved for the focus strike, for that knockdown. It is just absolutely optimal gameplay. But of course, it does require Area 5 for those boulder knockdowns to get the time for those longer DPS combos. Still, an incredible run. What an achievement. Almost sub 2 minutes. But what the hell beat that? It was Dual Blades, of all things. I'm thrilled to see that because Dual Blades has been suffering towards the end, or at best towards the lower end of the middle of the pack. And yet here is Dual Blades with a top spot at long last. We got Tempered Seregios, 3-star, and it's a sub 2 minute hunt. 1 minute, 50 seconds, and 22 milliseconds. Of course, Dual Blades, one of the best weapons to output element DPS, and that has just not been a thing through the wild's life. We saw it spike a little bit with Zoshia and the element hit zones there, and there was a big change that happened actually in Title Update 2. If you're unaware, Dual Blades players are doing a lot of Blade Dance 2 and Blade Dance 3 and trying to dodge or not use Blade Dance 1 due to its long animation that holds you in place. So a lot of Demon Flurry 1, then you transition into Blade Dance 2 and then 3 to kind of dodge it. In Title Update 2, they made it so that if you've got Demon Boost mode going, so the thing that happens when you do the perfect evade, you can then do an evade into Blade Dance 2, into Blade Dance 3. So that works phenomenally for Seregios, where, you know, you've got all this perfect evade style gameplay. Seregios can never actually land an attack on you because you just perfect evade everything. And as you evade, that allows you to instantly transfer into Blade Dance 2, into Blade Dance 3. So, despite the fact that this doesn't take place in Area 5 or the arena, it doesn't matter. Seregios is just like the ultimate fight for this version of Dual Blades. And if you haven't tried it yourself, I recommend it. It's incredibly satisfying. And if you want to learn how to maximize it, this is the run. So huge congrats to this runner. Go check out the run. But yeah, what a showing. A bit of a surprise for a few things here, like obviously Dual Blades being #1 at long last. What a rush. The fact that Bow doesn't really have great representation right now. Hammer and Hunting Horn doing well, but I think even more potential is there. And a surprising lack of Insect Glaive runs out there right now. But yeah, very interesting to look at. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have, do drop a like. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.